The day after we buried my mom, my brother slid a waiver across the table and said, "Just sign this, Julia. You're not in the will anyway." No apology, no explanation, just a glass of wine in his hand, and that smug smile he always wore when he thought he'd won. I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked away, because what he didn't know was that Mom had left me something else. Something he would never find. I'm Julia, and this is the story of how I inherited nothing, except the one thing that mattered most. What would you do if the truth your family hid was written just for you? Comment, truth, if you believe some letters carry more weight than a fortune. 0.55 car, the waiver sat on the table between us, creased at the edges like it had already been passed around, like my absence had been discussed before I walked in. Adam leaned back in Mom's favorite chair like it was his. He tapped the pen twice, waiting. "It's just a formality," he said. I stared at his shoes instead, new, glossy brown, probably bought with money from the joint account he now controlled. Behind him, the living room looked the same, and didn't. The curtains were freshly laundered. The mantel was cleared of all but one photo, Mom and Adam, laughing at a county fair. I wasn't in it. She wanted things simple, he added. No fighting, no drama. Funny how people only say that when they know the fight is already rigged. 0.5 Iga, I didn't ask about the bank accounts. Or the house title. I didn't ask why I wasn't told about the notary visit, the new will, the power of attorney papers signed months ago while I was out picking up her prescriptions. I just asked one question. Did she leave a note? Adam blinked. A note. She used to leave them. In books. On receipts. He shrugged. Maybe. But if it wasn't with the legal stuff, it doesn't matter. I nodded. But I knew better. With Mom, what mattered was never with the legal stuff. 0.5 hours that night, I stayed late, not for them, but for me. I wandered the house barefoot. Every drawer I opened released the scent of cedar and thyme. The hallway closet still held her perfume. Light rose, the cheap kind she'd bought for years and refused to give up. In the kitchen, I found the recipe book she used to write in. Not the published kind, just a thick spiral notebook with oil stains and penciled in measurements. Tucked between lemon pie and sour cream biscuits. I found it, a plain envelope, my name in her hand, Julia. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where she used to butter toast and hum old Dolly Parton songs, and opened it. The first line read, "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't say it out loud. 0.55. I folded the letter back slowly. I didn't read the rest right away. I just stared at my name on the envelope, tracing the ink with my finger, and let the silence press around me like warm water. She had left something, and it wasn't just words. What would you do if the world told you you were forgotten? But the person who mattered most whispered otherwise. Drop a comment below. And tell me, where are you listening from? 0.5 Fox. 3 days after the funeral, I went back to my own apartment. If you could call it that. 600 square feet above a laundromat on 12th and Maple. I could hear the dryers hum through the floor at night. The windows fogged in the mornings. But it was mine. No one had died there. No one had left me out of a will there. I sat on the edge of my bed that evening, the letter still folded neatly in my coat pocket. I hadn't finished reading it. Not yet. I just needed normal first. Something routine. So I stood up, turned on the kettle, and opened the cabinet. There it was. My mother's old teacup. White porcelain with a hairline crack near the handle. She never let me use it as a kid. Said it was from her wedding set. But when I moved out at 26, she wrapped it in newspaper and placed it in my bag like a peace offering. That was the kind of love she gave quiet, half measured, easy to miss if you weren't looking hard enough. Fa 0.5 fired. As the water heated, I flipped through my planner. Class rosters, lesson prep, a sticky note that read, "Remember Friday fire drill." Back to work. Back to students. Back to answering emails with, "Hope this finds you well." But I wasn't well. Because part of me still lived in that house, the one I grew up in. The one where I learned how to tie my shoes on the third step. The one where my mother used to fold laundry in silence while I read novels upside down on the couch. I thought she'd always be complicated, but never cruel. Until the will. Until Adam's voice in the kitchen saying, "We've already talked to the realtor." Until my name wasn't even mentioned. Foul 0.5 Foch. I sat at my small kitchen table, cradling the cup in both hands, steam curling toward my chin. And for a second, just one, I heard her voice. Not in some mystical way. Just memory. "You always oversteep the tea, Jules." I smiled, despite myself. I opened the envelope again. This time I read it. And line by line, everything I thought I knew began to shift. Far 0.5 Fox. The letter wasn't long. Mom had never been a woman of flowery words. "Julia, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say it out loud." I didn't know how. I never was good at saying what mattered. That part made me pause. Not because it surprised me. Because it didn't. I remembered being 8, sitting at the kitchen table with a broken pencil and a math worksheet. Adam had just spilled juice on his shoes. She jumped up, fussing, drying his socks with a hairdryer. I sat there, waiting for her to come back. She never did. Far 0.5 Igaluo. Back then, I thought I just wasn't as bright. Too serious, too slow to speak, too plain. I know I didn't always make things fair. The letter continued. "Your brother needed more. At least I thought he did. But you never needed anything from me. You just kept going." I blinked. That line hit harder than I expected. Because I had needed something. I just didn't ask. I needed her to pick my side. I needed her to say I was enough, even when I wasn't loud. Even when I wasn't easy to love. Far 0.5 Fox. There's a small account I opened in your name. And a lease, signed last fall. I wanted you to have somewhere quiet. Somewhere that's yours. Please don't fight Adam. Let him believe he got what he wanted. What I left you isn't for show. It's for peace. Peace. That word again. Mom didn't believe in justice. Not the loud kind. She believed in endurance. In wearing people down with silence. In disappearing from the places that hurt too much to stay. Fair 0.5 I gauze. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and stared at the fridge. A single magnet held up a photo of me from 2 years ago. At a staff luncheon, holding a fruit tart. I didn't even like fruit tarts. Mom had cut it out from the church bulletin. I remember now, she'd said it looked almost professional. I'd laughed, but part of me had clung to that word for weeks. Almost. Almost enough. Almost seen. But the letter said otherwise. And for the first time in days, I felt the tea in my cup go cold without even noticing. Frazo 0.5 ha. The next morning, I called in late to school. I didn't give a reason. Just said, "I'll be there by second period." The front office secretary, Theresa, sounded relieved. She was the kind of woman who sent sympathy cards in plastic sleeves. She had also once told me I had such a calm face, even at fire drills. That morning, I didn't feel calm. I felt like someone trying to walk through water with shoes full of gravel. Ferio 0.5 Al. Before heading out, I logged into my bank's app. The routing number from Mom's letter matched a credit union I hadn't used in years. Lane Valley Federal. She'd opened it under her maiden name and mine. Julia Helen Kramer. A name I hadn't used since college. The balance was modest. But it was there, real, waiting, and beside it, a scheduled auto transfer every month. Enough to cover rent, groceries, small things. She'd been funding me quietly for almost a year. I sat there with my phone glowing in my hand, heat rising in my chest. Not pride. Not gratitude. Something messier. Grief in disguise. Fazo.5 I still went in for second period. Room 207 smelled like expo markers and leftover cologne from the teenage boys in the front row. I took attendance, taught a lesson on dependent clauses, and answered a question about whether, however, needed a semicolon. On the outside, I was functioning. But under it all, I was scanning everything. Emails, announcements, even hallway chatter, looking for something to anchor to. Something real. At lunch, I opened my planner. Inside, I had taped an old grocery receipt from the last week Mom had been home. Milk. Ibuprofen. Apricots. She hadn't even liked apricots. She said they made her throat itch. But I remembered Adam bought them anyway. Said the new diet required soft fruits. He didn't know. He never noticed that she gave them away to neighbors or let them rot in the drawer. I did. Because I was the one who always cleared the fridge. Fazo.5 Fascia. The bell rang, snapping me out of it. I closed my planner and tucked the receipt back in place. That night, I took out the envelope again. Not to reread the letter, but to see her handwriting. To run my fingers along the grooves left by her pen. To prove, once again, that someone had once written my name with care. Even if it came too late. Even if no one else would ever see it. What if the only justice left to you was the one no one else believed ever happened? Furzo.5 I tree. The first time I felt something was off, it was a Tuesday. Gray sky. Early drizzle. The kind of Oregon morning that made coffee feel like medicine. I was dropping off a sympathy card at Mom's old church. Pastor Levin had offered to say a few words during Sunday service, and I thought it was the kind thing to do. On my way back, I passed the corner bakery. Walnut and rye. And there, through the rain, blurred window, was Adam. Sitting at a table with a man in a blazer and a stack of papers between them. Not grief paperwork. These were thick documents, with page flags and pen marks. I slowed down, not enough to be obvious. He didn't see me. But he laughed. Wide, easy. The kind of laugh you use when you think everything's going your way. He had never liked that bakery. Said their sourdough was too chewy. Fa0.5 I. That night, I texted him. Hey, just checking. Have you filed for the estate stuff yet? I can help with logistics if needed. He took 4 hours to reply. Already handled. Took care of it last week, no thanks. No detail. Just final, clipped efficiency. I stared at the message for a long time. Mom had been dead 6 days. What could he have filed already? I pulled open the manila envelope again, the one with her letter. Inside was the second folded paper. Photocopy of a lease. A 2-bedroom rental on 9th Avenue, about 20 minutes from school. The start date. October 1st. She had signed it weeks before the hospital admitted her. $0.5 The lease was under both our names. Which meant she hadn't planned to die in that house. She had planned to leave. Or at least, give me somewhere to go. I thought about how, in those last weeks, Adam barely came by. Always, between shifts, or dealing with the insurance. But he somehow had time to secure power of attorney. And now, coffee shop meetings, document stacks, evasive texts, he was moving fast. Too fast for grief, and something in my chest began to tighten. Not panic. Not quite anger either. A kind of alertness. Like my body remembered what it was like to be overlooked. And wasn't willing to be blindsided again. Fazo.5 The following Friday, I stopped by the house. Technically, it was still listed as Mom's residence. Her name was still on the mailbox. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something had shifted. The coat rack was gone. It used to creak when you hung anything on it. She never replaced it because why buy new when old still works? Now it was just an empty space near the door. A new console table had taken its place. Sleek, dark wood, clearly not her style. Fazo.55, I called out. No one answered. I wandered toward the back, expecting to find dust and silence. Instead, I heard the faint click of a mouse. Adam was in Dad's old office, hunched over Mom's desktop, eyes darting between spreadsheets. He looked up, startled. "You scared me," I texted. "Didn't check." I stood in the doorway. "What are you doing?" He minimized a window too quickly. "Just organizing some records." "What kind of records?" "Tax stuff. Legal things, you wouldn't know." I bit the inside of my cheek. "Try me." Fazo.55, he hesitated, then exhaled. "Just documents from the estate lawyer. I'm making sure everything's filed correctly." I nodded, pretending to believe him, but the trash bin on the floor caught my eye. Shredded papers inside, just visible enough. One corner had Mom's handwriting. I knew it because she used green ink. Always. Said it was easier on her eyes. I didn't say anything then, but something inside me shifted again. From alertness to calculation. Fazo.55, in the kitchen, I made tea. The pantry had been rearranged. My name, which Mom used to write on the back of the sugar container in faded Sharpie, had been scrubbed clean. There were no post-it notes. No reminder lists in her handwriting. No trace of the woman who used to live there. It was like someone had tried to wipe her out, but didn't know where all her hiding places were. Because I did. I had helped her label boxes in the attic. I had digitized her recipes. I knew her scent in every room. Adam might have had the papers, but I had the pattern. And something told me the story he was building left too much out. Fazo.55, that night, I sat on my bed with Mom's old laptop in my lap. She rarely used it. Mostly for crossword puzzles and watching church services on YouTube. I hadn't opened it since the week before she passed. The password was still the same. Setterland 43. Our old street growing up, everything loaded slowly. But once I got in, I opened her email. There weren't many unread messages. A few newsletters, a couple of prescription reminders. And then one subject line caught my eye. Power of attorney confirmation, executed copy attached. From a legal firm I didn't recognize. I clicked it. The email was dated 4 weeks before she died. Attached was a PDF file, signed, notarized, with Adam listed as sole power of attorney. No mention of me. Not even as backup. Fazo.55. The strange thing was, I remembered that week. I had taken her to 2 appointments. She'd been tired but lucid. Enough to complain about hospital food and quiz me about my students. She never mentioned the document. Never said she was signing anything that big. And I couldn't help but wonder. Had she even known what she was signing? Or had Adam just made it convenient? Fazo.55. I opened her online banking next. Or tried to. Access denied. I entered the recovery email. My own. Still denied. Then I checked her phone, still in my drawer, still charged. No texts from the bank. No alerts about password changes. They'd locked me out. Clean, silent, final. Fazo.55. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. Not from shock, but from something older. Something I hadn't let myself name for years. Erasure. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow sanding down. No seat at the table, no copy of the will. No reminder posted on the fridge. And now, no digital trace. I shut the laptop. My reflection hovered faintly in the black screen. I still looked like me. But suddenly, I felt like a ghost in a family I used to belong to. If your name vanished from every page, every login, every memory, would you speak up? Or stay quiet and start watching more closely? Fazo.55. I didn't confront Adam. Not yet. Instead, I did what I've always done. I documented. Saturday morning, I drove across town to Lane Valley Federal Credit Union. It was quiet, the parking lot half empty. Inside, the receptionist offered me tea. I declined. I gave her my ID and the lease copy Mom had left. "I'm trying to confirm account access," I said. "It's under Julia Helen Kramer." She nodded politely and typed, then paused. Her brows lifted ever so slightly. "Can you hold just a moment? I'll get the manager." Farzo.5 Alo. He came out in a gray vest, kind eyes, hands folded. "Ms. Kramer," he said. "It appears the account you're referring to is active, but access was recently updated." My stomach dropped. "Updated how?" He hesitated. "It was converted into a trust account. Beneficiary only. No direct access unless distribution is triggered by legal directive." "Who made that change?" "Your mother, according to the signature file. 3 weeks before her passing." That couldn't be right. 3 weeks before, she couldn't hold a spoon. Do you have a copy of that file? I'm afraid not. Only legal parties named on the trust can request documents. Your brother Adam Walker is currently listed. Fazo.5 Fa. I smiled, small and practiced. Of course, thank you. Back in my car, I sat for a long time. The engine running. My phone screen lit up with a weather alert: rain expected this evening. Possible flash flooding near 9th Avenue. I turned it off, then reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small spiral notepad, one I used to use for class planning. On the first clean page, I wrote, date March 23, event, trust account changed, person listed Adam Bank, LVFCU, witnessed by known signature suspect. I underlined, suspect, twice. Not for drama. Just so I wouldn't forget how this felt. Like someone was stripping pieces of my mother away and sealing them behind frosted glass. Pieces I was told not to touch, not to ask about, just to sign and move on. But I wasn't moving. Not yet. Fa0.5 I guy. I didn't tell Adam I went to the bank. I didn't call. Didn't email. But that night, I got a text from him anyway. "You good?" No punctuation. No context. Just 3 words that felt more like a check-in from a coworker than a brother. I stared at the message, then set my phone down. I wasn't sure what "good" even meant anymore. The house was his. The legal power was his, even the silence. He owned that now, too. Farzo.5 Vij. I drove past the old neighborhood before heading home. Windows lit up along the street. Kids on bikes, a dog barking behind a picket fence. The world kept moving, and I felt like I'd stepped out of it somehow. I slowed in front of the house. The porch light was on, not the soft yellow bulb Mom always used. Adam had swapped it for one of those harsh LED security ones. It flickered a little, casting long, sterile shadows across the porch. The swing was gone. She used to sit there on summer evenings with a glass of iced tea and a mystery novel. I'd sit at her feet and quiz her on plot twists, pretending I was clever enough to guess the endings. She never told me the answers. Said, "Some things you're meant to find out on your own." Back then, I thought she meant life. Now I wondered if she meant grief. Fazo.5 Ij. The curtains were shut tight, but I could make out a shape in the window. Adam, pacing. He was on the phone, smiling, animated. He didn't look like someone grieving. He looked like someone settling in. I drove on. At home, I microwaved leftover soup, the kind with alphabet noodles. The only thing that floated to the top was an M. I laughed bitterly. M for Mom. M for missing. M for mistake. I ate half of it before pushing the bowl aside. Then I pulled open my bottom desk drawer. Inside the file folder I'd started earlier, I added a new page. Witness observation, house A, porch swing removed, new bulb installed, behavior Adam pacing, smiling, 9:14 p.m., tone relaxed, unconcerned. I didn't know what I was building yet. A case? A diary? Proof that I wasn't imagining things, maybe just something I could look back on when this all unraveled. So I'd remember that the unraveling didn't start with me. Fauzo.5 hour. The next day, I stopped by the high school early, before the bell. Room 207 was quiet, the blinds still half drawn. I dropped my bag on the desk and booted up the computer. Instead of opening the gradebook, I pulled out Mom's letter again. I'd read it 4 times now. But something about it kept pulling at me, like a puzzle with one edge bent. I flipped it over, ran my thumb along the crease, and that's when I noticed it. Faint impressions. On the back, barely visible. She'd written the letter on notebook paper, pulled from something else. I grabbed a pencil and lightly shaded over the backside. A few words emerged: revoked access, notarized, final witness. Fauzo.5 figure it wasn't part of my letter. It belonged to something else she had written. Or maybe rewritten. Suddenly, I remembered a morning from a few months back. I had come by to drop off her vitamins and found her in the den, sitting very still. No TV on, no newspaper. Just a folder in her lap. When I asked what it was, she closed it quickly. Said, "Just old paperwork. Nothing that matters anymore." I hadn't pressed. She looked tired that day. Too tired to explain, and I was too careful to ask. Now I wished I had. Furzo.5 after school, I drove straight to the house again. Didn't call ahead. Adam wasn't home. His car was gone, the lights off. I used my key. It still worked. For now. In the den, everything was cleaner than I remembered. Too clean. The side table drawer, where she kept stamps, old cards, birthday lists, was empty. In the file cabinet, most folders were labeled in Adam's handwriting. But one sleeve at the back was torn, as if something had been pulled out roughly. I searched the cushions, the baseboards, even inside the old piano bench. Nothing. But when I looked under the sofa, I saw a single paperclip. Bent. Like someone had dropped a bundle and scooped it up fast. But missed this one detail. Fauzo.5 idar. I picked it up and slid it into my pocket. I didn't know what it meant. But I knew how she was. Meticulous. Careful. She never would have left anything half done. Which meant someone else had gone through her things. And they hadn't expected me to come back looking. What would you do if the only clues left were the ones someone tried to erase? Fauzo.5 Fio. By the second week after the funeral, the house no longer smelled like her. It smelled like lemon disinfectant and cologne. Adam's cheap kind. The one that always gave me a headache in car rides. I hadn't planned to come back again. But I couldn't shake the feeling there was something still in that house. Not spiritual, not symbolic, just missing. I stepped in through the back, like I used to when I brought her groceries. The kitchen counters were cleared, the fridge humming louder than I remembered. There was a realtor's folder on the dining table. Slick cover, professional photos, the listing price circled in blue pen. Below it, a post-it, pending offer. Do not touch. In Adam's handwriting. Fauzo.5 I picked it up anyway. Inside was the breakdown of estimated profits, escrow notes, a highlighted section. Seller Adam Walker, full legal authority granted via POA. My name wasn't listed, not even as a previous occupant. Just like that, I had become a stranger to the place where I once learned to bake banana bread. Where Mom taught me how to patch the lining of a winter coat. I moved to the den. The light was dimmer now that spring clouds had settled in. I sat in her chair. She used to keep her reading glasses in the side pocket. Now it was empty, except for a crumpled receipt. I unfolded it. Dry cleaning, 327. Date, last week. Under the name, Adam Walker. I laughed, a sound too sharp in the quiet. He had used Mom's account. Fauzo.55 back at my apartment. I opened my notes. Page after page, now filled with timelines, amounts, observations. But it all felt circumstantial. Thin. Almost polite. I needed something less neat. More human. So I called Teresa. Mom's part-time care nurse. She picked up on the third ring. Julia. Her voice was warm. How are you holding up? I didn't answer that. Instead, I asked, do you remember if Mom ever mentioned any legal changes? Anything odd? She was quiet for a beat. She asked me once about witnessing a signature. I told her I couldn't unless it was formal, notarized. It was during one of her Fajr days, so I didn't push. Do you know what she was signing? No, Teresa said. But she didn't seem confident. She kept saying, I hope this is what I meant. Another pause. She didn't say that often, Julia. Your mom was clear, even when her body wasn't. Fez.5 that night, I pulled out the envelope again. Not for the letter. This time, I looked at the lease. Signed, 2 names, hers and mine, with a clause highlighted at the bottom. In case of death or incapacitation of one party, sole right of residence passes to the other without need for probate. No one had told me. No one had even mentioned the unit again. I checked the date again. October 1st. Exactly 6 weeks before she lost her voice. She'd planned this, not as a gift, as an exit, one that didn't include Adam, and he hadn't seen it coming. Faza.55 I hadn't spoken to Adam in 5 days. Not since the "you good" text. Not since I found the receipt, or the trust conversion, or the lease clause. But that didn't mean I wasn't watching. I went to the county office during my free period. It's the kind of building that smells like paper and stale vending machine coffee. The clerk, mid-50s, bored, kind, didn't flinch when I asked for a property title lookup. She pulled the file. I leaned in. Owner of record Helen C. Walker. Power of attorney Adam Walker. Filed 1 month before her death. No transfer of title. No probate filed yet. Is that unusual? I asked. The clerk shrugged. Not really. Depends how quickly the family moves. But if the house isn't transferred soon, it can create issues. Can a POA sell a home after death? Now she looked up. No. POA expires when the grantor passes. After that, only an executor named in a will or a court-assigned administrator can act. My breath caught. So if someone tried to list a house now, it could be contested, she said flatly. Depending on the paperwork. I thanked her, took a photo of the record, slid the copy into my notebook. Fazo.55 that night, I drove to 9th Avenue. The apartment complex Mom had leased. I didn't knock. I just sat in the car across the street, watching the second-story window. The unit was empty. No lights. No furniture visible through the blinds. But the name on the door buzzer was still there. Kramer. My old last name. My mother's handwriting, even in block letters. She had wanted me to have this. Not the old house. Not the family drama. Just this quiet, 2-bedroom space, tucked between a park and a florist. And a key to somewhere she believed I'd finally be safe. Fazo.5 hours back home. I printed out everything. The trust note. The lease. The bank documents. The title record. A copy of the email from the attorney. I didn't know where this would lead, but I wasn't going to walk blind anymore. At the bottom of the stack, I added one more page, a list titled, What Mom Knew. Under it, my name was missing from the new will lease filed under maiden name, POA activated when she was already medicated, a handwriting not consistent. Adam moved fast, she planned quietly. Fazo.5 The next morning, I finally called him. He answered too quickly. Jules. I hadn't heard that nickname in weeks. We need to talk, I said. Pause. Is this about the house? It's about everything. You're being dramatic. I let silence do the talking. Finally, he said, Fine. Tomorrow? At Mom's. Not there, I said. Neutral ground, library. 2 p.m.? Another pause. Okay? He said, slower this time. Library. I hung up. He didn't ask why. Didn't ask what I'd found. Which told me, on some level, He already knew. Fazo.5 the library was nearly empty. Just the way I hoped. Soft carpet. Fluorescent lights humming overhead. The kind of quiet that forces people to lower their voices, even when angry. I picked a table in the far corner of the second floor, facing the genealogy section. It felt fitting. Adam arrived 6 minutes late. He wore a zip-up fleece and that same cologne, sharp, synthetic, masking something underneath. He pulled out the chair across from me. "This feels weird," he muttered, glancing around. I opened my folder. "Let's talk anyway." Farzo.5 Vigs. I laid out the lease first. He looked down, confused for half a second. Then schooled his face. "I know about the apartment," he said. "You never mentioned it." "Didn't think it mattered. You already had your place. This was in Mom's name. And mine. Signed weeks before her decline." He shrugged. "She probably forgot. She highlighted this clause." I tapped the line. "She made sure it passed to me directly." He stayed quiet. I pulled out the next document, the trust file from Lane Valley. "Why was the account converted into a trust under only your name?" "She gave me POA?" "She couldn't lift a pen that week." "Adam." He leaned forward. "You're fishing." "I'm documenting." Fazo.5 FICA. I placed the county property record on the table. No transfer filed. POA already expired. "If you're trying to sell the house in Mom's name, it's illegal." He stiffened. "I can contest the listing," I said calmly. "All I need to do is file with the county clerk." "You'd blow everything up over this." "No," I said. "You already blew it up. I'm just naming it." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is going to end well for you?" "No," I said again. "I don't think this ends well for anyone. But it ends honestly." Fazo.5 Akao. He leaned back, rubbed his jaw. "What do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? Not revenge. Not even fairness. Just truth. And peace. "I want you to stop pretending I don't exist," I said. "And I want what Mom left me. Not just the apartment. The story. The right to say her name without asking permission." He stared at me. For the first time in years, I saw him blink like he'd lost his place in the conversation. And I knew this wasn't just about money. It was about control. And he didn't have all of it anymore. Have you ever had to take back your own name? From people who tried to erase it? Leave a comment if you've ever had to fight quietly for what was already yours. And let me know. Where are you listening from? Farzo.5 Vice. You always do this, Adam muttered, voice low but tight. Come in at the end and act like you understand the whole picture. I didn't flinch. Try me. He scoffed. You weren't here when she stopped eating. When she forgot where the medicine drawer was. You came on weekends. You left when it got hard. I looked him straight in the eye. She was already forgetting things when you took her to the notary. Silence. Just the quiet scratch of someone flipping a magazine 2 rows down. You don't know that. I do, I said. Because she called me the day after. She said she'd signed something but didn't remember what. She sounded afraid. Firo.5 error, that landed. He blinked. Leaned back, rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't think it would matter. She said she trusted me. Did she say it? Or did you decide it for her? Adam didn't answer. So I kept going. You want to talk about who showed up late? Fine. You brought takeout and left it on the counter. I stayed through the nights. When she couldn't breathe. When she called out for someone who wasn't even alive anymore. His jaw clenched. I kept my voice even. She didn't want applause. She wanted presence. And she knew who was there. Falzorn five-eyed, he leaned forward again, but his posture had shifted. Less defensive, more uncertain. You don't understand what it's like, he said. What? To be the one they expect to succeed. To carry the name. To make the house worth something. I stared. You were always the favorite. Adam, you just thought the pressure made you invisible. He shook his head. You think this is easy for me? No, I said. I think it was convenient. I opened the last folder. Inside, a notarized witness statement from Teresa, the nurse. Just signed that morning. On March 3, Helen C. Walker appeared disoriented, unable to confirm what she had signed the day prior. I didn't have to say more. Adam read it in silence. Farzo.5 Vadro, for the first time, he looked like he wanted to leave. But he didn't, and I knew why. Because somewhere in him, beneath the paperwork and ego and justifications, he remembered who we used to be. Two kids on a hardwood floor, building pillow forts and fighting over who got the last lemon cookie. There was still a sliver of that boy left, and he had just realized Mom hadn't chosen him the way he thought. Not completely. Not without question. And now, that truth was sitting between us. Quiet but immovable, Fazo.5 var. Adam slid the witness statement back across the table. His fingers trembled slightly, just once, before he tucked his hand under the folder. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said. It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't denial either. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have words, but because I had spent so many years trying to be understood by people who were never listening. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. Is this what you want? He asked finally. To take it all? Burn everything down. I looked at him for a long moment. No, I said gently. I just want the part she meant for me, nothing more. But nothing less. Fizo.55. He nodded slowly, eyes lowered. Then tried one more time. You know. You were always the one who made things harder than they had to be. I smiled. Soft. Tired. Unshaken. No. I was just the one who didn't pretend it was easy. I stood, gathering the folders with quiet precision. He didn't move. Didn't stop me, and that was how I knew. He finally understood this wasn't about money. It never had been. This was about knowing. About memory, and what gets passed down, truthfully or not. Farzo.5 Ig outside, the air was cooler than I expected. Spring in Oregon is like that. Sunlight that lies to your face. I walked slowly back to my car, the folder pressed to my chest. The world hadn't changed. But I had. Because the silence between us wasn't a loss anymore. It was a line. And this time, I got to draw it. Sometimes, walking away isn't about surrender. It's about saying, I know who I am now. If you've ever reclaimed something that was quietly taken from you. Your name, your voice, your story. Tell me below, how did you know it was time to stop asking for permission? Farzo.5 Vaj. I didn't hear from Adam for 3 days. No calls, no texts, no cryptic messages asking if I was good. It was almost a relief. The silence felt earned this time. I spent those 3 days cleaning the apartment on 9th Avenue. The place Mom had leased for me. It still smelled faintly like cedar. The fridge was empty. The closet untouched. But it was mine. She had given me space, in the final months of her life. Not just physically, but symbolically. A room of my own, without needing to ask. Farzo.5 I scrubbed the windows. Replaced the broken blind slat in the bedroom. Hung up her framed botanical print in the entryway. She used to say, ferns made a space feel like it could breathe. I found myself breathing deeper there too. Between tasks, I started writing down names. Contacts Mom had trusted. Her old accountant, the estate lawyer listed on the lease. Teresa again. Even one of the church deacons who once offered help. If anything ever felt off. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but it felt like strategy. Quiet, careful, structured, just like she'd taught me. Farzo.5 I'd on the 4th day, I walked into the faculty lounge and found a letter in my box. Typed, unmarked. No return name. Inside a copy of the house listing. Now under escrow, pending sale. Estimated close 3 weeks. I flipped it over. A sticky note was attached. Just so you're not surprised. No explanation, no apology. I slipped the page into my bag and returned to class. But during third period, while my students worked on essay outlines, I opened my laptop, and I started a new document. Preliminary Notice of Objection, Property Title Transfer. It wasn't formal yet, but I was preparing. This time, I wouldn't wait for anyone else to give me permission. Fazo.5 Vika. That evening, I stopped by the hospice center. Not for anything official. Just to see Michael. He was sorting donation boxes in the back hallway when I arrived. Still wore the same navy hoodie. Sleeves slightly frayed at the cuffs. Still moved like someone who understood the weight of other people's stories. "Hey," he said, smiling gently. "You okay?" I nodded. Then I shook my head. He chuckled, not unkindly. "Which one is it?" "Both," I said. "Depends what part of me you ask." Fa0.5 Vaz, to led me outside, to the bench near the staff entrance. The sun had dipped just below the edge of the roof, casting long shadows across the lot. It smelled faintly of pine, mulch, and menthol cough drops. I handed him the lease copy. Then the letter. Then the draft objection notice I had started. He didn't interrupt. Didn't rush. Just read everything carefully, brow furrowed like he was translating a language he already half understood. When he finished, he looked up. "Do you want help?" It wasn't a rescue. It was an offering. I nodded. $5.5. He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a legal pad, started listing names. "Here's who we should check with. Title office. Probate court. Also, get notarized copies of the lease and the trust conflict. Don't rely on scans." "Adam's filing fast," I said. "Then we move steady," he replied. "Not rushed. Just clear." I exhaled for the first time that day. Not because I couldn't have done it alone, but because I didn't have to anymore. Farzo.5 Follow back home. I spread everything out on the table. Mom's handwriting. My own notes. Michael's clean list. It looked like a case file now. Because maybe that's what it had become. Not just a grief record. Not just proof I hadn't imagined the erasure, but a structure. Something solid enough to press back against what had quietly taken shape in the shadows. I didn't want to go to court, but if it came to that, I'd be ready, and this time, no one was going to tell me I was overreacting. Farzo.5 Viva on Friday. I took a half day from school and drove across town to the law office of Gregory Moss. It was in a modest strip plaza near a dry cleaner and a locksmith. No marble lobby. No receptionist in heels. Just a brass nameplate on the door and a laminated sign that read, "Walk-ins welcome. Appointments preferred." I'd found his name in Mom's planner, tucked between grocery lists and her prescription log. I didn't call ahead, just walked in with the folder under my arm and her handwriting in my pocket. Fa0.55 Mr. Moss was in his late 60s. Glasses perched on the tip of his nose. He greeted me like someone who knew grief wasn't a stranger. "You must be Helen's daughter." I nodded. "Julia." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I haven't seen you since you were in braces," he said softly. "Your mom used to bring you here with a tote bag full of library books." I smiled, just a little. "She never liked waiting rooms." He nodded. "She also never missed details." I handed him the lease, then the trust record, then the pending house sale. He read them carefully. Didn't interrupt. Didn't blink too much. Then he leaned back and exhaled. "I didn't handle the trust setup," he said. "That came from a third-party group Adam used." "But you did her original will." "I did. Years ago, he reached into his cabinet and pulled out a slim, green folder. Inside a copy of her 2016 will. 2 names listed for inheritance. Adam Walker, real estate; Julia Kramer, financial assets, retirement accounts, and any other portable legacy. Fazo.5 I stared at the words. I never saw this. She asked me not to file it unless she confirmed final revisions. Did she? He paused. Then opened his drawer again. Pulled out a smaller envelope, creased at the corner. She dropped this off one afternoon. It wasn't notarized. It wasn't signed, but it was dated. He handed it to me. Inside was a handwritten note in green ink. Greg, if anything happens, and I don't make it to a final draft, this is what I want: let the house go. Julia should get the lease apartment. Adam's not ready for full ownership. He'll need time, but don't give him control. She shows up. He doesn't. That should count for something. HCW, Fazo.5 I sat very still. Would this hold up? I asked. He sighed. Not as a will, but as evidence of intent. In probate court. It's better than nothing. Especially if other pieces support it. I have other pieces, I said, and I meant it. Fazo.5 On Monday morning, I walked into the probate clerk's office just after they opened. No makeup. No emotion. Just a file folder and a name. The clerk glanced over the paperwork, checking each page with the rhythm of someone who's seen too many families tear each other apart before 10 a.m. She stamped the last page. That was it. No fanfare. No lightning bolts. But I felt something shift, deep under my ribs. Fazo.5 By Wednesday, Adam received the notice. He called once. I didn't pick up. Then a second time. Then a text. What are you doing, Julia? This affects both of us. I stared at the screen. Not both. He hadn't used that word in weeks. Not when he listed the house. Not when he changed the locks. Now suddenly, we were a unit again. I turned off the phone. Fazo.5 I went back to see Gregory Moss that afternoon. Handed him a copy of Teresa's witness statement. Then the dated letter Mom had left. Then the lease, fully notarized, with the clause circled in pink. He didn't say much. Just added each item to a labeled folder marked Supplemental Intent, HCW. Before I left, he asked quietly, "You sure you want to follow this through?" I nodded. "I'm not doing it to win," I said. "I'm doing it to not disappear." He smiled faintly. "That's a good enough reason." Fazo.5 Back at school. I returned to my class like nothing had happened. But during my free period, I found an envelope in my faculty mailbox. No name. No stamp. Inside, a printed copy of an email thread between Adam and the realtor. Subject line: Need to move fast. Sister is threatening contest. Can we accelerate escrow? Underneath, the realtor's reply: If a probate objection is filed, title can't transfer until cleared. Recommend halt. Also, POA invalid after death. You didn't disclose this. I sat down, heart calm. He tried to rush. And now, it was officially stalled. And just like that, I was no longer erased. I was the one in the way. Fazo.5 By Friday, I heard through Gregory that Adam's escrow was frozen. The buyer had withdrawn. Too much uncertainty. Too many unanswered questions on title legitimacy. I didn't celebrate. I just noted it in my file. Escrow halted, April 11. Buyer backed out. No legal clearance. No emotion. Just record keeping. The same way Adam used to take notes on Mom's meds without ever looking her in the eye. Fazo.5 A few days later, I received an email from the consignment shop where Mom used to volunteer. Subject line: Sorry about what happened. Inside, a single sentence: We didn't know the truth until recently. Just wanted you to hear it from us. It wasn't much. But it meant something. People were starting to understand. Not because I was loud, but because the silence was finally different. It wasn't absence. It was witness. 0.5 years later that week, Adam's attorney officially withdrew from representing him. Gregory showed me the filing. Conflict of interest, client failed to disclose POA expiration and competing claim. I imagined the moment Adam got that call. How his voice must have gone tight, then high. How he'd probably blamed me out loud, then sat in silence after hanging up. Because there's nothing quite as disorienting as losing your legal armor when you thought the fight was already won. Fenro.55. I kept teaching, kept grading essays on The Crucible and To Kill a Mockingbird. My students joked about themes of justice and unfair trials, not knowing how literal it all felt. On Wednesday, Teresa stopped by the school, just to drop off muffins. Blueberry, in a Tupperware she'd labeled, N.O. New S. I saw your name in the notice at the clerk's office, she said softly. I raised an eyebrow. My sister works there, she added. We sat in the break room for 10 minutes. No talk of court or trust or houses. Just her grandkids, my lesson plans, and the way Mom used to hum when she watered the plants. When she left, I noticed something tucked beneath the muffin box, a copy of her care journal, the notes she kept for every visit to the house. Dated. Detailed. Signed. It wasn't just supportive. It was admissible. Proof that presence wasn't just remembered. It was recorded. 0.5 The key arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. No note inside. Just the familiar brass cut, dulled at the edges, slightly bent where Mom used to jam it into the stubborn deadbolt. The house key. I held it in my hand for a long while. Not because I wanted it, but because I remembered the last time I saw it hanging on her key hook, right under the magnet that read, "Don't confuse quiet with weakness." I placed it on the table. Didn't cry. Didn't smile. Just breathe. 0.5 hours that night, Adam called again. This time I picked up. He didn't start with hello. Just, I don't know what you want from me. I leaned back in the chair. I already told you, I said. Nothing more than what's mine. A long pause. I don't have the money to fight this, he said. You had the money to dry clean suits you never wore. I replied, flat. Another pause. He wasn't angry anymore. He was small. Can we fix this? He asked, almost a whisper. 0.5 I looked out the window. Spring had arrived all at once. The first pink buds showing on the tree line. The porch of the apartment glowing faintly under the soft LED light Michael had installed 2 nights before. No, I said gently. Because this isn't broken in a way that needs fixing. It's broken in a way that needs naming. He didn't reply. So I added, you chose to rewrite the story. I just reminded everyone who was in the room. I ended the call. Blocked the number. Not in anger, but in peace. 0.5 2 days later, a neighbor from Mom's block dropped by school. She had a pie tin in her arms, covered in foil. I didn't know where else to take this, she said. Helen used to leave muffins for me every 3rd Sunday. I figured, maybe it should come full circle. We stood in the parking lot for a while. She looked at me kindly. Not as a daughter who disappeared, but as a woman who had finally been seen. 0.5 I follow. The house was never sold. The listing disappeared quietly after the buyer backed out. A month later, Adam relinquished the POA entirely. No legal battle, no press, no family meeting. He didn't contest when Gregory filed a motion to freeze asset distribution pending clarification of intent. He just vanished. From the attorney's inbox. From the neighborhood. Even from the consignment store where he once dropped off Mom's old scarves like trophies. 0.5 I didn't claim the house. I didn't want to. Not out of resentment. But because every window still echoed her cough, every corner smelled faintly of eucalyptus and something unfinished. Some spaces hold too much memory to be inherited. They can only be released. So I turned in the updated lease papers, signed under my full name. Julia Ann Kramer, no hyphen, no shared last name. Just mine. The apartment on 9th Avenue became my quiet place. Small, but mine. Fazo.5ish. Michael moved in slowly, first a toothbrush, then his favorite chipped coffee mug. He never asked to share a drawer. He just folded his presence into the edges of my life like someone who'd already learned how not to take up too much space. We didn't rush, we didn't post, we just existed. Together. One weekend, he brought home a wooden frame, walnut, hand-carved, and said, "For the letter." So we hung Mom's note in the hallway. Not in the living room. Not for visitors. Just for us. Every time I walked by, I paused. Not to read the words again, but to remember her tone. The way her voice dipped when she meant something. The way she folded truth into small things, a post-it, a grocery list, a mug of tea that never reached boiling. Fazo.5 vows in May. Gregory called to tell me the court accepted our supplemental evidence. Not a full reversal. There wasn't enough for that, but enough to amend her record. Her estate now officially listed the lease as transferred per intention and co-signed agreement. My name. Her name. No one else's. He ended the call by saying, "That part of the story is closed, Julia." I didn't say anything right away. Then finally I asked, "What part stays open?" He laughed. "The part where you choose what to do with it." Fazo.5 The first time I went back to Mom's house. It was early June. I didn't go inside. I just stood on the sidewalk across the street, coffee in hand, watching the late morning light hit the porch railing she used to repaint every summer. The "for sale" sign was gone. The flower bed was overgrown. No one had watered since spring. But the mailbox still had her initials, HCW. I didn't feel anger. Or longing. Just distance. A kind of gentle ache for what had been real and also impossible. Fezero.55 I left the key in the mailbox. No note. Just one final act of letting go. Back at the apartment, I opened the drawer where I kept her recipes. Not for the food, but because she always scribbled things in the margins. Tiny notes to herself. Use less salt. Julia noticed. This one made Adam frown. Skip next time. Too dry. Needs more honey, like my daughter. I copied that last one and taped it inside my kitchen cabinet, right next to my tea mugs. Not for inspiration, just as proof. Fazo.5 Fox Michael and I planted a small herb garden on the balcony. Basil, rosemary, a little thyme. She would have called it modest. I called it mine. Sometimes I'd sit out there with my grading papers, and I'd catch myself thinking about her. Not as the mother I had to fight for, but as the woman who tried, quietly, in the ways she knew. She wasn't perfect, she hesitated, but in the end, she chose. And sometimes that's the legacy that matters. Fazo.5 Follow. One evening, I spoke at a local hospice fundraiser. They asked me to share something. About caregiving, about transition, about what it means to stay present. I didn't talk about court. Or lawyers. Or Adam. I told a story about the time Mom fell asleep on the couch with her glasses still on, and I tucked a blanket over her. She murmured something half awake. You always notice. That's your gift. That was the night I started believing her. Not because she finally said the words, but because she'd shown me in paper trails and pink highlighters, in keys she didn't ask back for. In silence. But never absence. Fenzo.5 Fio. And now, when people ask what I inherited, I say this: a one-bedroom apartment, a letter in a walnut frame, and the memory of someone who chose me. Even if it took a little while to say so. That's enough. More than enough. Some legacies don't come wrapped in deeds or wills. They arrive quietly. Through choice, through witness, through the people who kept showing up. If you've ever been the one who stayed. If no one ever thanked you. If your name was almost erased. This story was for you. Tell me, what did you inherit that can't be measured? And where are you listening from?